about that street right outside the door? What needs to happen out there? And from the perspective of business, not health, and that's important as well, but why would a group of business people, why would a Chamber of Commerce, why would a BID choose to invest in trees? So as Dr. Jackson said, a lot of my work seems to be about confirming the obvious, collecting, spending a year or two collecting data, analysis, writing it up, to then report it to people. And those of you that work with trees and work with landscape and work with parks hear this stuff and go, well, duh, of course. But to have the numbers, I think that's what we offer you, is within our current civilization, our current society, having numbers helps. It gains you a seat at the table. When dialogue is happening in a community about policy, about budgets, pull out those numbers, fact sheets and whatnot, and you gain a seat at the table, and that perhaps starts the discussion. So trees in retail districts. I'm always intrigued by visions of the city. And there are these movies, Bruce Willis, Die Hard, and the doom and gloom vision of the city of the future. Brown, dark, everything falling apart. And I live in Washington State, and you may have heard we just had a bridge fall apart on I-5 up near the Skagit, or on the Skagit River. So infrastructure is important, but green infrastructure as well as gray infrastructure are the sorts of things that aren't depicted in these images. And it's always dark and raining, just like Seattle. Maybe we're a doom and gloom city. But there's hope within. This is one of my daughter's favorite movies. She's 22 years old, but she still loves to sit down and watch this movie. And Wally, in the movie, finds this bit of hope, this seedling that presents maybe a view of what can come. And architects and planners are really engaged. They're buying into this now, that the city can be vibrant, it can be vital, and it can be potentially sustainable. I don't know if sustainable is the right word. More efficient, perhaps. But we see some pretty outrageous designs for communities, and some of these are actually being built now in China and Dubai and places where instant placemaking is happening, instant cities. And in these places and in these designs, there is an interest in integrating nature in a more substantive way, for the sake of water management, for the sake of air quality, and health is becoming ever more a question or an issue. And as I look at these images, and I arrived this morning, moved around the city a little bit using light rail, very few palm trees are in these cities of either doom and gloom or positive, sustainable systems. So I think this is something you have to contribute to the world, is with climate change, more palm trees, right? But here, to the point of things, what I'm going to do very quickly, really, is to share with you some of the findings from a research program that we've done. It ended a little bit ago, but we did a series of studies almost over 10 years' time. And so I'm going to just pop right through the findings, and then at the end give you a source if you'd like to learn more. If you're one of those people who just loves to dig into scientific papers, I'll show you where you can find those, and if not, that's fine too. So why do we buy? Economists, more so in the past, not as much now, but economists would have us believe that we are rational beings and we have a goal of something that we want to purchase, and in a very disciplined way, we gain information, we compare prices, and then we go out and buy it, and we reach satisfaction, and then we repeat the loop. Well, we now know that that is not how things happen. And Paco Underhill is an anthropologist who went into retail consulting, and he has learned, he and others like him now have learned that buying, there are so many environmental influences. Just as Dick talked about how environment influences health, it also influences our retail behavior. Indeed, in doing this work and digging in a little bit, a lot of our psychology majors, our most talented psychology majors from our universities, are going into marketing research to learn about how to influence us. I hear of a lab, this hush-hush lab in Florida somewhere where they are running MRI scans as people are shown new products, new colors, new textures, new things, new stuff that we can buy. So we really have a lot influencing what we might do when we go to the store and the decisions we make. So my pitch is, why not trees? Why not include trees in these behavioral influences? Here we are, 10 years of research, about 10 years, multiple studies, replicate studies. Here's what we found. Comparing places that have trees, and not just a tree here and there in front of a business, but a fully developed, well-managed tree canopy, an urban forest canopy, versus places that do not have that asset or that amenity. What we found is that people tell us, shoppers, some of them we encountered on the streets in these districts, others we sent surveys. They tell us, of course, that the place character is more positive, but what really surprised us is that they told us that they anticipated that interactions with merchants would be more positive in those places having trees, as well as the quality of the products. They made judgments based on curb appeal, based on the appearance of that district before they even stepped into a shop. They also told us that they would be willing to travel greater distances, greater amount of time, more frequently, and so on, to reach these places that have trees. So there's an attraction, there's an element of comfort, as well as these judgments, these attributions, that are influencing or could potentially influence people to come to a place and to spend more time there. And here are the numbers. I noticed on some of the promotional stuff, the number was 20%. I can't claim that number. I'm not quite sure who might have done that study. What we found was that people are willing to pay up to 9 to 12% more for goods in business districts having a quality urban forest. 9% in those communities, smaller communities, places of 10, 20, 30 population, a higher number, 12% in larger cities. And we actually did some of the surveys here in Los Angeles, in Koreatown. I don't remember what the results were here. But so you see this range of positive response to trees. Health could be a possibility. That woman with osteoporosis moving along the street may feel more comfortable, may not experience negative health consequences, but in addition, she might be buying more in that district. She might have heavier shopping bags. Place marketing. That's what this is about, is creating a district, creating a message, creating a destination. You're building relationships with people and telling them that you welcome to a place like this. Methods, questions, very straightforward. And again, replicated over numerous studies. We use surveys, we use photo simulations so that people evaluated either a place with trees or a place without. They weren't doing direct comparisons. Random sampling as best we could, a lot of the basic premises of good science. And then again, in a variety of locations across the country. Here's a summary of what we found with this imagery. Each of the surveys typically had about 30, 35 images showing a range of street conditions, vegetation and landscape and whatnot. And this set is from the mid-sized cities, 100,000 or so, and it's pretty typical of what we found in each of the projects. So we asked each person, each survey, to rate these scenes on a scale of 1 to 5. How much do you like the image? And taking the mean of these images, this is what we found. So these small little pocket parks, little landscaped areas where you can kind of step out of the busyness of the street, often receive the highest ratings. Then, full canopy, not far behind. And this raises some issues with business people. Some business people, why? Why? Blocks their signs. What else? Yeah, debris on the ground, fruit, birds, the whole thing. Anything else?
Sidewalks crack.
Sidewalks crack, I think, and infrastructure. I think we're learning the solutions to that with more time and better tree selection. And the sign thing, one thing that we have found is we've looked at communities where they have trees or they don't, and the sign conflicts. It seems a lot of our building code and our development code has that conflict built in, that signs are required to be at a certain height and a certain placement on the buildings, and it just happens to be where trees grow. So, you know, I've talked about this, and, you know, is it possible to do tree signage co-design? Is it possible to have signs on the street, maybe monument signage, so that you're grouping signs? And frankly, if someone's cruising along that street at 35, 40 miles per hour, are they seeing every single sign necessarily? So anyway, there are issues, but what we see are shoppers appear to appreciate this sort of landscape, or this general character. Continuing then with these images, smaller trees, greater distance apart, lower ratings. And of course these can grow up and create that canopy, but in the interim there might be some effort to create a little more appeal, sidewalk appeal, with some planters, furniture, and whatnot, waiting for that full canopy to come into its own. And then finally, what many business owners told us, this was the best for shoppers. They could see everything as they drive through. Well, the consumers themselves didn't agree. You can see there the rating is quite low.
I mean, what is this? I don't know. I just don't get it. It's bleak. Yeah.
It's bleak, yeah, and yet we're told that you can see the signs, the parking is there. And you can see the storefronts, you can see through into the windows or whatever display they might have. And that, I think, is the assumption that the primary access of shoppers is by car. And what we're seeing in our cities is greater effort to get people walking on the streets for health reasons, and also it creates a better sense of place. It creates those relationships and destination if you have a walkable place, and trees can be a part of that. So we exhausted every possibility, I think, with these studies. This was one of the earlier ones where we attempted to learn, if you're driving on a freeway, if you're driving on an interstate, what is your perception of a community based on roadside? So again, the images, blank or clear sight view, you know, and car dealerships love that, malls love that, but people don't necessarily. So here was the option that we presented in aerial photo and on the street level or driver eye level, and these were, again, much more highly preferred. So what we've been proposing is that to meet this need for visibility, that the vegetation be clustered and create windows, view windows. So again, looking at that co-design of the roadside and where the signage is placed, rather than the expectation that signage be accessible everywhere. So there you see the comparison of the two different situations, and this one highly preferred, much more highly preferred. Strip malls. You know, your reaction really typifies most audiences. Some people love them, others are, really? But they, you know, we have to admit, they're the incubators of many businesses in our communities. Accessible buildings, smaller footprint, retail, the rents are accessible. But there again, I think we have options. We have choice in the character of community that we're creating. So again, this was an early study. We took base images, photoshopped in vegetation in different conditions, different densities, and people told us once again that they would prefer to shop in a place like this, though they acknowledge the visibility. They might not be able to see all the signs. They again judge better character of place, better character of product, and here it is, even with strip malls. So what's going on here? As an environmental psychologist, I often encounter business people who are so into the inside of their businesses. They plan, they invest, they're constantly cycling product or service, they're paying attention to their customers, but for some reason they're not paying attention to that sidewalk and what happens outside the door. So if we can implore people, help them understand that that experience of their business starts out in the street. It starts as you drive up, it starts as you walk along that place. And that you're creating experiences. You're creating a sense of welcoming, You're creating a sense that the person belongs there, and you'd like them to come back, and you want them to have a memorable shopping experience. And so we have, through theory, analysis, you know, the first cut are these images, perceptions that people have of these places. But we've seen and heard other things as we continue with the work. One is attribution theory. We can't possibly process every bit of information that enters our senses. And so, of course, we rely on patterns of the past, what we've learned from the past, from our experiences, from education, with encounters with other people. And we tend to attribute then certain traits to other people, to other places. So when I meeting some of you here tonight, you meeting me, you probably attribute certain things maybe about my lifestyle or my family or where I live or whatever. And that's an efficient way of processing information. It extends a hypothesis, if you will, that we continue to test with additional information that we gather. I suggest to you that a nice landscape, a beautiful landscape, a well-maintained landscape, including that forest canopy in our business districts, people are attributing certain values. They're attributing certain experiences when they encounter this. We have found neatness counts. You know that. Not only do you plant trees, but you have a sanitation plan, you have a security plan. Neatness counts. If you have a tree pit, I noticed walking along the street this afternoon, some of the tree pits, you know, a little bit of paper and cups and stuff. Get that out of there immediately, really. I mean, you're in the land of Disney. What did Disney learn? They've got high school and college students running around constantly picking up every shred of paper, every shred of trash, because they know that behavior, if people observe a certain behavior, they're inclined to do the same. So neatness counts. Curb appeal, trees, accessory vegetation, meaning the planters, the seasonal planters, the perennials, as well as the care of the sidewalk, its condition, very important. One thing that came to us when we were working in revitalizing business districts is some of the shoppers told us, oh yeah, we noticed that they're planting trees in X district. Something must be going on there. I think we'll go check it out. So reviving this planting plan, the trees themselves, as well as what goes on within that canopy, can be a way to continue to initiate curiosity and relationship with shoppers. And the last is, and I often have slides and I didn't pull them in, I regret that I didn't pull those in, use the vegetation to identify your district. So we found that in interviewing some business people, they identified their competition as a business 2 doors down. Others identified their competition as another district across the city. It's all about working together, and they can't create a good forest canopy without working together. So use the character canopy, the selection of trees, the patterns of vegetation across the year. All of that then contributes to an identity so that someone knows, I've arrived. This is a place where they're working hard to make a place that's meeting my needs and will have the goods and services I want. I know where it ends. I know where that border is before I enter another place. I work, with arborists. Sometimes I get so frustrated because arborists have adopted this 30-foot on center plus or minus tree planting. Do we really need linear, and do we really need equidistant? Some of the business people are really concerned that a tree lands pop right in front of their door, where 2-3 feet this way or that may not make that much difference. What about clustering? Could you have more dense planters at corners or mid-block? Anyway, let's change things up a little bit, again, to help with this idea of identity and to create a different visual pattern. The first is, this is an evolving effort, trees in cities, trees in small spaces in cities. And I think we're learning, yes, there are some trees that are issues now when they leave and others are planted. We know better what to plant, and nurseries are developing better stock for those uses. That's number one. Number two is just let's give them more space. If we have a 4-foot, 3-foot square cutout, that's just not enough space for a growing thing, a large growing organism. The third is some really interesting technologies with soils, so that soils, structural soils have small gaps within a bed of gravel, fine gravel, and the tree roots then can move through that without actually popping the sidewalk. And then there are more expensive solutions with vaults, structural vaults soiled within sidewalk slabs on. So let me wrap this up. For those of you that would like a little more information about these things the studies that I spoke about, you will find them at this web link, Human Dimensions of Urban Forestry and Urban Greening. And I will have, well, I guess the presentation will be made available through Up With Trees? Okay, or with
California Forest Council, Invest from the Ground Up. Yeah.
Invest from the Ground Up. Okay, so those will be available. So I'll just close by saying that to me, it's astounding that trees do as well as they do in our cities, given the challenges of water, of heat, air quality, all of these things. And who was it who was digging to put in a tree and hit a pipe? Had to pull out a piece of pipe or something? There we are. You know, I had this flashback. So my first job was as an urban forester. It wasn't called that, but that's what I did in Key West, Florida. That was my first real job. And I was working with a youth crew, and we were planting trees in a park, and the shovels were in the ground, and all of a sudden, cling, cling, and we found a wash machine. We excavated an old washing machine in order to put that tree in. And that, to me, it tells us what are the challenges for trees, but also what are the challenges for those of us who want green to happen in our communities. We persist, we find the money, we find the energy, carry on the evidence about health, the evidence about people's perceptions of trees. I hope it's helpful for you as you make the case and as you talk with others in your communities. So thank you.